My name is Pannell. Um, I am a neuropsychotherapist from North New Jersey, and my research is focused on quality of life and beliefs. And this presentation is titled A New Instrument to Measure Quality of Life, the Dispositional-Affective Frequency Questionnaire. And the purpose of me creating this tool was because I feel like quality of life is actually understudied. Most of psychology focuses on pathology and what's wrong with people, but there's not enough assessments that look at what's going well for people. So I wanted to make something that I could use in my dissertation research. Okay, we're going to start off with just a brief definition of quality of life so we could be on the same page. Quality of life says it's subjective perception of one's life in context. Basically, it's subjective. It's what you think it is based on your environment, who you're around, how you see it for yourself. The benefit of that is that somebody can say their quality of life is extremely high based on their own terms, right? So they get to set the parameters of what goes into their calculation of their quality of life. The downside to that is the same thing as the benefit, is that people can say their quality of life is great and still not meet certain parameters that the people around them might have or might consider. So you can have someone who is like clinically delusional who could say, yeah, my quality of life is great, I'm the president. They're not actually the president, they don't actually have the things, but they have the subjective belief. That being said, another way I would phrase it would be just life quality. If we were to look at a life and what's the quality of it, that's essentially what I wanted to get at. Let me close this door for a second. All right, so okay. So I want to start with a story about how I started creating this tool to measure quality of life. And it started in 2015. I graduated from Howard University with my Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, my Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I went back to my hometown, North New Jersey, and I still had after graduation, there's still like a lingering academic energy. And so me being academic in my neighborhood, I was curious about studying the world around me, even though I didn't have any formal training, or I did research projects in school, but I didn't do much data collection. It was all like secondary research. So I got inspired one day, and I said, you know what? I wonder if I could make a survey. And so I created a survey. That survey was the foundation of what became the DAFQ. Basically, I made a list of all the adjectives I could think of that could describe someone's disposition or affect, and within reason, because I wanted it to be something that people in my neighborhood could understand. So I didn't necessarily want to choose words that would be confusing to people. So I came up with 57 items. Samples would be like happy, sad, noticed, things like that. I created the list of items, and at the top of the page, I was asking people to identify what organization they were in. My original idea was to investigate organizations. We just came out of the IO presentation. I looked at social organizations in my neighborhood. So my neighborhood growing up was technically Blood, right? That's a social organization. Down the street was Grape, and then down this other street was Grape, and you go up the street, it's Blood again. So there's different gangs in the environment. Those are social organizations. At that age, I started working, I realized it's also a lot of Freemasons around the town that you'll see. It's also a lot of Rotary Club. It's a lot of people in these organizations that are just floating around town, you know, they kind of doing anything you wouldn't even know. And then you also have Divine Nine sororities and organizations and fraternities and things like that, also in the city. So the fourth one would be employers, because once you go into a job and you go through training, that is a process by which you become part of this organization. I became interested to see like how can we judge the organization as better or worse? Well, I would think we could judge it for better or worse by the fruit that it bears, and the fruit that it bears being the condition of the worker who lives there. Like, if I go to this job and I sit under the tutelage of this leadership for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, who do I become? And I took that as a sign or reflection of the organization. And same things with gangs. Like, if I join this gang at 15 and you look at me at 25, you can tell the quality of my big homie or the quality of the gang organization depending on how far up the ladder you want to go. It could be just our set, it could be the larger organization, or it could just be my one friend that's in my peer group that I'm around. But all of them, I feel like, could be held accountable to the condition of the person 10 years later. And so I didn't have a way to like guess the answer. I mean, I could guess the answer, but what I did was I made my survey and I walked around and I talked to people. You know, it sounds so simple. You know, these people I've seen probably 100 times walking around. So I just had my surveys. At that time, I want to say, I didn't walk around every day. I walked around enough to get maybe 10 or 15 people to do the survey on my own. And then I knew somebody who was a Delta who was tapped into like the Divine Nine network in New Jersey. And then I gave her like 20 or so, I might have given her like 40, but I think I only got like 30 back. However many I got back, I think I gave her more like blank copies. And then she gave them back, and it had different Divine Nine people that identified that as their organization, and then it had how they felt. And so the prompt asks people to identify, okay, the prompt is typically I feel, right? And then it'll say like happy. And then they rate it on a Likert scale from 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree. So if I say I strongly agree that I typically feel happy, then I would get a 5. If I strongly agree that I typically feel sad, then I would get a 5, but it's reverse coded, so then it would be a 1. That's a psychometric things sidebar. Anyway, long story short, I created it, I administered it, and then I got the data back, and then I was trying to figure out like how to make sense of it. That data sat there for at least, I started my PhD program in 2021. I did that 2015. That data sat there for 6 years. Because I collected the data and I didn't have the, like, what do I do with this at this point? Also, by then I kind of lost interest, you know, other things came up, life stuff. So, but I kept the data. So by the time I joined my PhD program, I still had it and I was able to analyze it. And I developed the scoring. I had already developed the scoring method when I first created it, and I scored some of them, but because I lost interest, it's like the project kind of like stagnated at that point. When I went to do my PhD program at Howard, I looked back at the data and I analyzed it. And then what I found doing that is, in that first preliminary, can't even really call it a study because it wasn't formal. It was very informal. Basically, I compared the people that were in fraternities and sororities to people that weren't. People that were in fraternities and sororities, important detail. When I came up with the scoring method, the items were organized based on 3 different categories. There was positive, self-affirming dispositions and affects, negative, self-defeating dispositions and affects, and then social positioning. which is basically how you see yourself in relation to others. Do you see yourself as equal to people around you, above them, or below them? The order of the items went social position, positive, negative, social position, positive, negative, in that pattern, all the way down. When I scored it, I got a total score, but I also got scores for each category. So I took all the items for social position and they got a social position score. All the positive, they got a score. All the negative, they got a score. What I found was in that first initial one, I think maybe we had maybe 50 people responded to the survey, roughly. I don't have the data pulled up. I actually thought this was the 10-minute one, so my apologies for that. What we found was that the people in the fraternities and sororities scored higher on social positioning. They scored higher on positive self-defeating, but they scored lower on negative self-defeating affects and dispositions, which means like, yeah, they endorsed strongly agreeing that they felt more socially like respected and admired by their peers. And they also had more positive emotions like happiness, but they also had more sadness. So when I got the total score for them compared to non-Greek counterparts, it evened out. They weren't actually different. So yeah, that was like, I would say maybe that was like step one. From there, we got to, so all of that is like the origin and north. When I got to my PhD program, we went to this part, this component analysis, because now I start talking to, these psychologists that say, no, do this. You got to do a factor analysis. You got to do, you got to administer it with something else. You got to do construct validity, all of that. So then we start to like formalize it a little more. When I did the component analysis, remember, the way I designed it, there were 3 subcategories. When I actually did the principal components analysis, it came up with 12 categories. I said it was 3, but based on the results, you can't see them, you have to like zoom in. 12 different factors loaded. So my hypothesis was not supported because I had suggested there would be 3. But what it told me was that maybe there's more complexity to what I was asking about than I initially understood. That the items grouped together in ways that I had not predicted. What I did was I did a confirmatory principal components analysis, and I used my theory that there's 3 categories, and I redid the component analysis based on each category. So I took all my social positioning items, and then I put only those items in a principal component analysis. And it gave me 4 for each one, so it still goes back to 12. As you can see though, there is a majority on this first component does have the majority of them, but they're kind of spread out. The last one, number 4, says, typically I feel educated and typically I feel settled. For some reason they group together, but they're also, one is negative and one is positive. What all of that means right now, I cannot tell you. That's the fun of science, I guess. You get to simmer on data endlessly. But hopefully one of you may tell me, we get to question things like that. Yeah, this was you can see the social positioning items on here. So typically I felt noticed, appreciated, envied, safe, protected, secure, idolized, supported, heard, vital, educated, settled, stable, willing, respected, honored, remembered, important, developed. The positive self-affirming category, also you can see the first component, all of them loaded on that one. So the purpose of doing a component analysis is to test whether I'm studying what I think I'm studying. When I come up with a theory and say, no, this theory breaks down into these 3 groups, I'm thinking there's these 3 subcomponents. This is telling me that each of those subcomponents that I thought is actually divisible into 4 separate components. So not to bore you with the charts and tables and everything, but just so you know, the items, positive self-affirming included happy, motivated, powerful, inspired, knowledgeable, ready, fearless, unstoppable, intelligent, confident, attractive, empowered, fulfilled, satisfied, sexy, open, accomplished, prepared, and excited. And then negative, self-defeating, similar case, most of the items loaded on the first component, and it included afraid, hopeless, depressed, hungry, ugly, complacent, belittled, worrisome, fake, threatened, ignored, betrayed, used, manipulated, tricked, tired, stupid, lost, abandoned. Okay. After the principal components analysis, I wanted to see if I could get concurrent and discriminant validity. In order for me to get concurrent validity, I needed to administer it alongside another test that I thought would behave similarly. And for me to get the discriminant, I needed to administer it alongside a test that I thought it would behave opposite of. For the concurrent validity, I use this PWS, stands for the Psychological Well-Being Scale. Psychological Well-Being Scale basically measures well-being, not necessarily quality of life. They don't use that term, but it's in the ballpark. Again, a little unprepared with the slide. I could show you more details on the slide if I use a different slideshow. But y'all understand. Point being, it asks people, I think that assessment has 46 items. But the DAFQ that I created actually had a 0.554 Pearson correlation with that, which was significant at the 0.001 level. Meaning basically it did what I said it would do, that they both measured quality of life. Well, my test performed similarly to that test. The PHQ-4, some of you may have seen that, or the PHQ-9, it's the Patient Health Questionnaire. It's used as a brief screener for anxiety and depression. Oftentimes people use it in like clinics, and Howard's Student Health Center actually uses PHQ-4. So higher scores on a PHQ-4 mean higher likelihood of anxiety or depression. So if I'm saying high scores on my DAFQ means higher quality of life, then I would expect there to be a negative relationship between scores on my test and scores on PHQ-4, which there is, negative 2.49. Also, you can see the relationship because the Psychological Well-Being Scale and the PHQ-4 also have a negative relationship with each other because they're measuring in 2 different directions. The last part I did was, okay, so step 1 was me creating it, just administering it. Step 2 was when I did the principal components analysis and this last slide about the Psychological Well-Being Scale and the PHQ-4, all of that was done together in like one season of my life. This slide shows the last part. This was part of my dissertation. Well, the whole thing was part of my dissertation, but this was my most recent contribution or addition to the process. For my dissertation, I administered the Who Cure Well brief, which is the World Health Organization's brief quality of life assessment. It has 25 items compared to the full one, which has 100 items. And it asks people questions about how satisfied they are with different aspects of their life. I looked at the correlation between the DAFQ total score and the Who Cure Well brief total score to see if my tool was aligned with their tool. And it was. It's 0.511 and it's statistically significant. Just so we are clear, the Who Cure Well does not produce a total score. I created a total score for it. That's not something they have, but my rationale for doing that is that all of so basically on the Who Cure Well, you'll get 4 scores. But for all of those scores, they're positively coded, meaning like higher scores mean better functioning. So if individually higher scores mean better functioning, I would think the sum of them higher scores will also mean better functioning. That was my rationale. If anybody disagrees, I'm open to hear it. Anyway, that worked out. To keep it with what the WHO Cure Well actually publishes, therefore, I reran it based on their components. So the WHO Cure Well has a physical well-being scale, they have a psychological well-being scale, a social well-being scale, and an environmental scale. So they break it down. Those are the total scores you would get. My DAFQ total score was statistically significantly correlated with all four of them. So that being said, my tool does what I suggested it does. It does measure quality of life. It does more than that, actually. This is like a small part of it that I got less pushback on. It measures more than quality of life. It actually measures psychological advantageousness. But because psychological advantageousness is a novel construct, sometimes I got a lot of pushback about, fighting people with that. But the easy thing that kind of, people were more accepting of was it does measure quality of life. And I'm sharing this with you in the hopes that maybe you'll consider adding it to your tests or your research or your practice or however you pursue psychology. That this measure can be good not just for like research, but it's good in practice too. Again, I had planned this to be 10 minutes, but what I would say is that the application of this measure is that you can use it for individuals, you can use it for organizations, you can use it for virtually anything where you're trying to get an understanding of how does this thing affect people. When I was conceptualizing it or reconceptualizing it while I was in my PhD program, I was thinking like, for us to have, when I say us, for me to have grown up in the neighborhood and see people that I grew up with, and we all older now, so now we all got like proof of concept. Or like when you're younger, everybody's talking, they talk, they walk and they walk, they live in their life. You don't see it, you don't see what becomes of the condition, like right then and there. After, I'm 33, so I would say from 18 to 33 was a decent amount of time. Not saying like where you at now is your end all be all, but I had questions like, okay, if I took 100 people that, let's say I took 100 people that was blood, 100 people that was Crip, because this is my inception of the project. It's centered around like, it was heavily influenced by like the gang cultures around me. I'm just like, we could, if we really wanted to compare them, we could count like anything, virtually any metric, even like health things. So for example, which let's say we took two sets, a blood set and a Crip set, and we said, okay, let's compare, I don't know, it could be academic achievement, it could be something as simple as how many teeth you got, it could be urine samples, it could be blood samples, it could be any measure we want to put on it. And the DAFQ is another option that you have at your disposal, that you could use it to compare one thing to the next, whether it's the gang sets or even classroom or like teachers. Like if we have a professor and you administer it to their class, and then another professor, you administer it to their class and see, okay, is this, what's becoming of the people that sit under the tutelage of this person? Yeah, that's the sum of it. Any questions? I'll go ahead and then
I'll
go.
clap first.
Yes, so currently the measure is 57 items still, or?
In its most recent iteration, yes.
Do you have plans of having a briefer scale?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I have to muster up the motivation to actually do it, but yeah, I've been thinking about getting it down as small as possible, even if I could do 3. If I could get it to 3, I think, Yeah, then it would be easier to just like do it as a brief like screener kind of thing.
Yeah, so if you were, as far as the process of doing that, would you use like, I guess, the component analysis to see like, you know, the plug from the ones that are already grouped, you know, from the component analysis and then deciding which ones
Yeah,
are good?
if I'm gonna do it like the scientific way, yes, that would be the way to do it. Is there, I guess I'm open to the idea that the 3 don't have to be 3 that I've already used. Like, it could be new words that I replace with. They just need to be, they need to capture what I'm trying to get at. So it could be that I could use the component analysis and just find the 3 that had the highest eigenvalue on there. Or I could come up with a whole new, honestly, my approach to science, I'm not necessarily, I don't necessarily carry the same assumptions most scientists probably carry. So honestly, you could, if you got the time and the resources, I could just do random 3s until it worked, to be honest. I could try every combination of 3 until I find what works without even doing anything statistical, just going in random order. I know most scientists probably would be like, no, you're wasting resources, but I mean, it'll get there one way or another.
Thank you.
Yeah, question.
Question. I was trying to understand because you said you started off with 3 and it ended up being 12, and the 12 were in the, that was in the first column. Can you go back to the like between the table that showed, there was one table that showed a negative 0.4 something on one table, and then there was a table that loaded mostly in under component 1. Right. So I think that was the one that loaded mostly under. So when you were talking about, wait, that's not 12. Yeah. So when you were talking about it ended up being 12. Can you say what that was again?
That was this one.
Okay.
There's so many that it looks smaller, but remember, I proposed 3. Each of the 3 broke down into 4.
Right.
So it became 12.
And what were the 4? What were the 4 for? Say the one that, because you asked a question, you were like, if somebody can find that out, then whatever. On the one that loaded negative 0.4 something, what was that 4th component?
So the components don't have names. You have to name them. Like the software can't tell you what it is. All it can say is these things have a correlation at this number. Like these things load together. When most people pick this, they typically pick this too.
Right.
That's all it can tell, but it can't name what that is.
I guess I was wondering what were they loaded on as opposed to, like if they were loading, if they were grouped mostly over here, what else were they loaded on? Was that another item that they were loaded on? Was that another...
I guess that would be something for me to like generate a name for.
Okay.
Because I can't say what it is. All I can say is they grouped here, and then they grouped here, and then they grouped here, but the grouping itself doesn't have a name unless the person puts a name on it.
I got you.
What were the, were you recording age ranges for those you were surveying?
I did. For my dissertation research, everybody was 18 and older. For study 1 and study 2.
18 and older.
For that preliminary one, no. But there were, my hunch would be everybody was 18 and older, because I only spoke to adults.
Okay. So you spoke to people from the Divine Nine. So
Yeah.
And then you spoke on the other side, were you actually speaking to people who were in groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you find like other demographic differences between like the different groups when it comes to like ethnicity wise or age group wise?
No. My sample for, so you could look at it like 3 studies. The one I did back home in Newark, and then the one I did with the principal component analysis, the psychological well-being scale, and the patient health questionnaire, and then this last one I did with the Who Cure Well. For the latter two, okay, let's go. The very first one, I did not record that data, like demographic data. Only demographic I got was what organization they identify with. For the second one, where I did the component analysis and the psychological well-being scale, PHQ-4, that was majority black. I can't tell you what percentage, but it was majority black, majority women. It was also administered via Qualtrics through an online survey. We had 700 something people click the link. Only 169 completed the actual, filled it all the way out. But the last one for my dissertation research was 100% black, the sample. Some people were black plus something else, but everybody was black. And the sample, I want to say, was about 65% women. The mode was, the main demographic of that was 18-year-old black women in college. So like freshmen, yeah. Because, and I had, this is a tangent. I was talking to somebody about, their critique was that the research was convenient. He was talking about convenient sampling. And I don't get that because I don't see how sampling, inconvenient sampling to me sounds like it's not gonna happen. Because my approach when I was recruiting was literally I had a table and I was inviting people. Excuse me, how you doing? Would you like to participate in the study? Now that's only some people that's gonna look at me and say yes. Even if I go, and I went down to the National Mall, which is very diverse, I would think it's very diverse, but it's also a lot of tourists, so maybe they don't have the time. I was invisible down there. I probably spent 2 hours out there, only spoke to 2 people. So I don't know, that has nothing to do with this so much, but the idea of convenient sampling seems like an issue to me because when it's inconvenient, it just doesn't work. Especially like following COVID, people have trust issues. Nobody's just gonna sign up for a study where they'll come into the lab with somebody that they don't know. So there has to be some level of convenience, I guess,
Got the door open.
yeah.
So you said it would be best applied, like, what would you say? It would be best applied, like, transparent, when we're talking transparent in practice. Say if you are introducing a new course or something to that effect, and you give it pre-course, like they arrive based off of, I guess it might have to have something else, like whatever you're studying, but you give it to them pre-course and then you give it to them at the end of the semester to see, basically just to see how they're feeling about the experience within the course itself.
Yes.
Right, that would be
I can see it as like a pre and post year.
Yeah, okay.
Because then you'll get their baseline and then you'll get to see what happened as a result of them being there. Granted, you got error from life, other stuff could happen, but yeah.
Okay.
How long did it take on average for folks to complete the survey? Do you recall?
20 minutes. Just this one by itself, maybe 10. Because all you're doing is checking, strongly disagree. There's a point where people have to like think back, like, oh, do I agree? They may be on the fence. But I would say 20 minutes, man.
Usually just this one versus one. You're talking about your most recent.
Well, just the DAFQ compared to doing the DAFQ, the psychological well-being scale, the patient health questionnaire, and the boot
Oh
bill.
yeah, just your scale.
Yeah, just the DAFQ by itself is maybe 20 minutes max. But I don't even think it would take 10, to be honest.
I'm very curious in terms of like when you're working with the organizations, if it had broke down between those who were considered to have more clout in the organization versus those coming in, to be able to, almost from a longitudinal, so you could say like the big homie could be like, yeah, I've been here for 20 years, for 10 years, for 15 years, and this is where I'm at. This is my measure after all this time.
Right. That was one of the questions I had that I did not analyze the data in such a way to answer it, but it was a question that I had because I had them identify not only what organization they were in, but how long they were in it. Because I wanted to see, are the newcomers feeling something different from the old comers, and then is there a tipping point? Like I joined the organization, first 5 years, great, and then that 6th year, is there a, but I didn't really like analyze the data or have enough people. Yeah, I will point to my data analysis as my limitation because I didn't even like set it up to answer the question, even though I had the question.
Mm.
Yeah. But I am interested in that, especially with employers, because when you see people that, you know, sometimes somebody could be at the job a long time, doesn't necessarily mean they enjoy it. I'll be interested to see, because I know typically, you know, you got the honeymoon phase. It's like you catch somebody in the honeymoon phase, everything is probably high. It's great. This is the best job ever, isn't it? Never been no place better than this. And then, you know, life happens.
We moved to the divine nine piece, like there's also that social pressure to stay. Like, yeah, I'm happy, this is great. So
Yeah.
I found your piece, I think it was on the depression, if I'm not mistaken, where they scored lower. But I took it as like outside pressure. Their life may have a bit more pressure, or maybe even more pressure to be a bit more dishonest about where they really are,
Right.
because of what they're representing.
Right. That's another thing I consider, yeah, because on some of them, for certain, I remember specifically seeing some people's like sheet, and it looked like they just went down the right side, like check, like. And I can't say that's dishonest. I got to take the data for what's given to me. But yeah, you bring up a good point. As a member of this organization, do I feel like I can't really say on this that I don't like it? I gotta kind of say, yeah, it's great.
Right. Whereas if I'm in a set, it's not. I didn't join the set so I could be happy. You know?
That's deep. I don't know. I've never heard anybody articulate that, but I would agree that maybe that wasn't the main goal.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I guess that's another conversation about then what's the point? What's the benefit?
Yeah, that's when we would get into the numbers with the big homies, and that's where you can get some of that real. Yeah, what was the benefit? You know?
Yeah, I actually I've messaged some big homies that I've known. I would love to see, even if I'm not a part of it, professional development for big homies, because I feel like if big homies were empowered with the same knowledge that teachers have, or the same investment that teachers get, like they go to pre-service, they get like CEUs, stuff like that. I feel like big homies need CEUs. Even if you've been a big homie on this block for 10 years, however long you've been here, you might need to brush up on some like child psychology things that'll help you, you know, run your line, because we got kids dying.
Absolutely.
And then like, not even if they're not dying, it's like, to me it's crazy that like, if I'm the big homie and I'm saying, all right, this is my little bro, I brought him into this, I'm like his guide through this. If he's strung out on drugs in 3 years, like, what did I say about me? And then it's like, well, how did I even get selected for this role? Is it just because I'm older? Is it because I do violence? Because the ability to do violence and the ability to raise a child is not the same.
Sure.
Two different roles. Like, granted, you probably do need a balance. But I think sometimes it just be violence. Like, if you're good at violence, you get a pass. It's like the ultimate, you know, ain't nobody gonna say nothing to you. Like, all right, that's the person we call when it's time to be violent. But when it's peaceful times and they need help with homework, that violence ain't gonna really, don't apply to that. So I am critical of big homies in a loving way, because I feel like we could be doing so much more. And I've seen firsthand some big homies I've been disappointed in their leadership from what I've observed, like up close. Like this, you know, that scene from Black Panther, he's like, "This is your king." It's like, this who the neighborhood say like we should look up to.
It's perpetual adolescence. So it's difficult because if I really function as a big homie, I have to admit that maybe I'm a middle-aged man. You know?
Yeah.
So I have to maintain that perpetual. We have to have the same exact vices for us to be able to do it. We gotta listen to the same music too. We gotta holler at the same girl walking down the street for me to maintain my connection with you. Because most young people don't really desire a relationship with another person.
I don't know though, because I think some do. Because I mean, yeah, I think sometimes people do want. I'm gonna say in the neighborhood I grew up in, I noticed my house was right next to the corner store. So even though I wasn't necessarily on the corner, I live, like, the corner store's here, I live here. So I see it every day. I walk past it every day. It seemed like, outside looking in, that people did want some connection to a paternal figure.
Yeah, I think outside of that space though, because I worked with that population.
Yeah.
And for me, it was different because it's like, oh, the African Dashikis. So that I can escape with him.
It's a separate lane.
Yeah, when I'm with him, I can cry. I can, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll be like, why your tattoos misspelled? Like, I can say certain things. But in that other space, you know, it's like, yeah, I gotta have that mask, and it gets sweaty when you get that mask. But with me, I'm like, man, take the mask off.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, you're right. They do crave for that, but just not within that space because it's weakness almost. You know, from my experience.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, especially the way that it's asked for or the way it manifests. Yeah, it might not. I don't think people would say like, yeah, I miss my dad. They might not say that.
Right.
At least not during that time. With today's generation, they might say it. Today's generation, from like me working with high school students, they seem more like emotionally intelligent. They have the vocabulary to
More
articulate.
sophisticated.
Yeah.
I agree.
So they could say, yeah, I miss my dad. Whereas maybe back early 2000s, 2010s, that wasn't something people said.
Yeah.
My question for you all, not sure where we at on time. Anybody got the time?
You passed 10 minutes.
2:40.
Beat to 10 minutes.
Yeah, the 10 minutes is up, but I was supposed to be here. No, I'm in the right space.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I applied for 2 different things, and then it's a logistical thing, but I'm supposed to be here. My question for you all is, how could you use an assessment like this in your work?
Well, this is IO psychology, like to the T. You know what I mean? When you speak about employee well-being and work-life balance, like this is it. Even judging organizations, because like, you know, there's scales that they use, like employee happiness per organ. I think Starbucks always like beats everybody out. They're like the highest always. You know, that's mainly just because they give part-time people benefits. So you know what I mean. So they have a lot of incentives, but this has actually more measurement beyond incentives, man. So within IO, this would be right there. Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I was actually, I thought about what you were talking about in your session with, say if an organization is starting out, they've been operating off of Eurocentric based values, right? And they have the desire to switch to Afrocentric based values, and using this assessment to observe that progress. You know, the changes in quality of life, you know, once because I think this will be really well applied in a longitudinal context, because just the pre and post will be very situational. I feel like, you know, anything can change later on. Like, I would be interested in even seeing from 2015 when you first started collecting data, if those same people were to fill out the survey, where has everything gone since then? You know, because the whole ecological context of that time is completely different. So that would be really interesting. But over a course, like to apply it to a longitudinal context, whether it's organizational, any group-based dynamics. Like I said, the example earlier, like in the classroom, like if you're introducing a new curriculum or programming or things like that, to see where people are at, how they're feeling, and you know, maybe have the word fails me, but in midway through, you know, see where they're at, you know, at the end 6 months later, and to see what that happens, because I'm also wondering what are the situational limitations, you know, where you were saying And I wonder if those 12, the range from the 3 to the 12 vary based off of that situational context. So this part of the measurement can be applied here, but not here. But now you take this part of the measurement and it might apply here of the same scale.
Yeah.
So that would also be interesting. So I think it could go many different ways. And to your point, starting with the leadership, though. You know, assessing whoever, just seeing where they're at. Maybe
Get their quality of life.
get their
first.
quality of life, because that is going to determine the quality of life and within the situational, the longitudinal quality of life of the other people that you are getting.
You feel like they will be related?
I do feel like they would be related, because like if you show up to a classroom right here and you had a bad day and that is projecting out into your students, then your students take the assessment that day. That your quality of life, for whatever reason, in that space is going to impact your student responses in that space, right?
Okay.
So seeing where they're at, I feel like will be, there'll be some correlations between the other
Okay,
responses.
gotcha. No, I see what you're saying, because they're gonna influence them.
It's gonna influence.
But I think also in decision making, I mean, it's not like you court sex. But let's just say, you know, like I may make choices based on, I'm seeing like my big homie's like he's depressed. I just seen him in the video dancing, you know, and blowing back, but I'm looking at his scale and he's depressed down the line, and I'm supposed to join and be him.
Yeah.
Right.
In the next, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that, the value in seeing it, and again, it's not like you courting, like, it's a bloody crib, you know,
But we probably should.
yeah,
If you
or.
gonna do it. Yeah, like,
That was my challenge. Like,
Yeah, like this is what the future is gonna look like
Yeah.
for you. You know, even though it looks like this on the outside, you know. So that piece that, you know, John was speaking about, I think would be critical. But in the education space, I thought that's where you were gonna go. Where would you see it there?
That's what I'm saying, in the educational space. He gave an example of an instructor, say if you have the same curriculum and you have one instructor presenting the curriculum, one instructional style versus another, I think that would impact, because of situational context impacts student motivation, students' feelings, students' emotional well-being within a classroom impacts their overall academic well-being. It can, for the short term and the long term, right? So if we're applying it to, it could work again within a classroom, within a new course, within an existing course. Like, oh, all of the students in here have been getting these scores. Why? You know, for this period of time with this instructor. Well, how are they feeling about it? How is their emotional state positively or negatively impacting their academic outcomes? Like in a small level, within a department, you know, the leadership within a department, even when it comes to you know, institutional context, grants, you know, this department is getting more grants than this one. Well, how is the quality of life of the department impacting the amount of awards they receive? So I feel like it can be applied very small or very broadly, because the emotional, all of this, and I feel like people fail to realize how much things like, we happen to be on this page, but how much things like social positioning positively or negatively impact academic outcomes even within the same institution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I like that. The last slide is a QR code. Y'all already have my contact information, but I'll put it here in case anybody wanted to get a copy of the assessment. I can send it to you. If you scan the QR code, it'll prompt you to send me an email, or you can just reach out to me.
I was gonna say, are you recording the amount of reach outs that you get? Is that
No,
data in itself? Okay.
no. I guess I'm working on sharing the work. Like, I created it, and I don't know what good it does for me to have it just sit in a book somewhere.
Right.
So I'm just sharing it, you know, if people want to use it. But also, I think it does shine light on maybe we need more quality of life assessments and maybe we could integrate them into what we already doing more often, so we can make those like inferences about what's going on at these places, why people feel how they feel, why is productivity down. Productivity might not be down because of lack of knowledge or lack of skills. It could be quality of life of the person.
What differences, I guess, when we're talking about context, because you used the who, quality of life, what differences did you notice as far as like the cultural responsiveness or application between their quality of life assessment and the one you created? And do you see yourself making varying versions of yours to apply to various cultural contexts?
So your first question, the difference, the who Kiowell asks questions. Mine doesn't really have, it doesn't have any questions on it. It just says, typically I feel, and then you got the list of items, and then you just rate them. So I think it's very simple. Also, the who Kiowell is very clear when it's very clear to the person taking the assessment when you're talking about different domains of your life. Whereas on mine, when you just see a list of items, I don't know if you feeling respected. I don't know where that's coming from. Because you can feel respected in one area of your life, but not in the other. But you still, on this, you have to come to some strongly disagree, or maybe you neutral, or maybe you disagree. So you're doing like a summation almost internally when you respond on mine, whereas on theirs, I can't say they tell you, they ask about respect specifically at all. They do ask about like physical health. A lot of assessments will ask like specific questions like, are you able to walk? Or how satisfied are you with your romantic life? Or how satisfied are you with your friendships? Mine doesn't ask many questions. To your second question about variations of it, yeah, I would say stay tuned for as many variations as I can produce before my time is up. I'm gonna work it out. We talked about creating a shorter version. There's so many different ways to do it. I'm not expecting that I will do it all. This is my contribution to science, like they say open science, but everything's behind a paywall. But if you email me, I could share it, and then maybe somebody else will do a study, and they'll modify it and just cite me. I'd rather take a citation. Yeah, because it's too much work for me to do it all myself. I don't think that's how science is designed. It's designed to be a collective effort. I'll do my piece, and then hopefully something I said will inspire the next person. They'll take something from that, and then they'll do their piece. And now we got a body. We have a whole literature on this construct, which is even why when I put the first slide up, quality of life is almost like, I got so much pushback using that term that it got the feeling like quality of life is like saying Alzheimer's disease. Like it's like a brand name or something. I don't like that. That's why I put life quality, because I want to talk about the construct in a way that's expansive. So even when I say like, at a minimum, it measures quality of life, but it also measures psychological advantageousness, which is broader than quality of life because it includes intersubjective and objective outcomes. So it's not just based on what you say about yourself. It's based on what your spouse says about you, what your kids say about you, what your urine says about you, what your blood says about you, stuff like that.
So did you know that when you were doing that, when you were doing the biological measurements and comparing it to just what they were recording on the surveys, what differences did you notice in like what they were saying and what their body was saying?
I did not analyze the data in a way to answer that question. I will have to go back and look at it because I didn't even, we did find that on the DAFQ, higher scores, the DAFQ total score was positively correlated with heart rate variability. So people who score higher on this had higher heart rate variability. But I don't have I can't really articulate all the nuances of that at this time, because I would have to go back and look at the data. I'm trying not to overstate what happened.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be explosive, that kind of information. Yeah. Especially, thinking in the school environment. How is this affecting the child's health?
Mm-hmm.
Under this structure versus that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be.
And like you said, you said when people have been trained to say certain things, whether that's how they feel or not, like the body keeps the score.
Yeah,
exactly. So the body will say more, and also in then the context, like when you're talking about like the authoritative, how you view authority, right? So on a continent, you're not about to question, there's it's going to be different. The responses will be different, but even when you take someone, as an international student or first generation, second generation, whatever, they're in this context, but their responses and their body responses may also be different because of how they've been conditioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that would be really interesting. If you're scared to say, for lack of a better fear, if you're scared to say this is terrible, what is that? What's going to show?
You're saying their body might say it, even if they don't articulate.
It might, or it might not. Be interesting to see it if it doesn't say it. If you've been so conditioned that you are now comfortable and you've settled into, this is your norm, right? That would be, it would be interesting.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that in addition to using this to evaluate organizations and people, I administered it to evaluate ideas, to evaluate beliefs, which is how we got to psychological advantageousness, which is basically same way we would put the big homie under the microscope and see what became of somebody who followed you. Yeah. We put the belief under the microscope and say, what becomes of the people who subscribe to you? And that was what my dissertation was about, actually. So I replaced organizations. I didn't even look at organizations at the last iteration. I wanted to see, do you believe God exists or God does not exist? Or are you in the middle or undecided? And oddly enough, for that, or surprisingly, for those 18, majority 18-year-old young black women in college, those who reported God does not exist scored higher on this. They had higher quality of life based on this measure.
And so, that would be so interesting because are they equating God to religion or is he separate? That would be another. That would be a separate. That would be another question to ask. If you're equating God to your religious context, right, then that's going to be a different answer. Then who is God to you?
Right. Right. And I guess that's part of my motivation to do this. So you can ask those questions that I didn't ask. Yeah. And hopefully it goes on and people can generate more studies.
Yeah. Muslims and Christians, things like
yeah, because that same person you said that's courting gangs, maybe we should court religions.
People do.
But oftentimes, I think people take, well, at least how I framed it, my assumption is that people kind of go first come, first serve. Right. I'm Christian because that's
the book
that's what y'all gave to me. If I was born in another place and I got a different book, I'd have been something different.
Right. This is what we had. Yeah, it was free.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't get that critical analysis of it until you're probably older. And then some people don't get it. They don't question it. They plateau at, no, this is it. This is the way, the only way. This is how I gotta go.
Yeah, believe. But I think the Divine Nine piece is very valuable. And that's what I was thinking when you said that. Because a lot of times when there's any criticism that comes against them, they talk about all the good things they've done. Mm-hmm. But they don't talk about all the good things they've done because they don't measure anything. Like you can't go on a website and see a list of all the initiatives and things they've put in place. Mm-hmm. They just how far we've come? You know who marched for you. It's just it's a lot of it becomes again the mythology. But if you really measured it, that would be another great example of that. Some measurable outcomes for the amount of time that you've been here. Can you really say that this has improved your life, or at this point you just now committed to the interpretation.
Mhm.
And you're fighting the interpretation and the belief, you know, sustaining that as opposed to the facts and the truth.
Yeah,
Which-
like
that
upholding
choice.
an image
Yeah,
as
and
opposed
that's
to it
now
really
your
being
fight.
that.
That's your fight more than anything
Right,
else.
that part.
Yeah,
Because you don't really have anything measurable.
yeah,
You know? And I think that's a generational thing too, because like I came from the generation of cars and houses. Like that's when you made it. That was the clout.
Mhm.
You know, you get your nice car, you got a house in the suburb, you made it, you done.
Mhm.
And then the generation after me was just like Ubers and like, no, we just gonna live in a cool part of town and have like 10 roommates. I don't want a house and I don't want a car. You know, so that the measurement, how it changes. You know, but a lot of people from my generation are like, man, like me, man, I wish I never bought this house. I can't even sell it. Nobody's buying big houses anymore.
Mhm.
So, you know, that would be like something that you would measure over time.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
because when you first got it compared to where you at now,
Right. Like,
and it
I
may
achieved
change.
the status symbol, but then over time, it's
Yeah.
like, this didn't bring what I thought it was going to bring. And it's,
Yeah.
you know,
One of the something that's conceptually important was when I was thinking about quality of life, I would put quality of life and maybe like illness on two separate spectrums to suggest that, you know, you can have a high quality of life and still have illness at the same time.
Good point.
So one doesn't necessarily mean the absence of the other.
And that could be linked to religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, wow, there's so many points.
How did you align that with, because you did both quality of life and psychological advantageousness, right?
Well, psychological advantageousness basically eats quality. It's like overarching. It's the umbrella.
Okay.
And then quality of life was just one component that I used to support psychological advantageousness.
Oh.
But psychological advantageousness in the end, because I had to rewrite the paper so many times. In the end, is quality of life is a small part of life outcomes.
Right.
So quality of life is, you know, in the literature, it's subjective. So when I was pushing back to say no, we can stretch quality of life to include the intersubjective and the objective, I got a lot of pushback. So my compromise was, okay, I could just say life outcomes. Because quality of life is a life outcome that comes from these beliefs. But then also, your blood, if you got a blood test, that's going to come from, maybe indirectly, from what you believe. Or if you got a urine sample, from what you believe about food, and then what do you eat, and then how does that affect GLP-1, I don't know, you know, whatever the hot, you know, biomarker is these days. Yeah, I think that is my time. It's 3:05. Okay. I appreciate y'all.
This is dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.